You ready? we're just gonna we're just gonna read about Daniel and the Lion's Den, right? It was y'all's idea, right? Right. Don't pay attention to any of these people over here in the chat because they probably got potty mouths. Y'all be civil. All right. So let's just read till we see something that y'all got a question about. How's that? You gonna read too? It seemed good to Darius to appoint 120 satraps. I don't know what a satraps is. We'll have to look that up. Over the kingdom, that they should be in charge over the whole kingdom, and over them were 3 commissioners, of whom Daniel was one. And these satraps might be accountable to them. What do you have for satraps? Does it say the same thing? Princes. The KJV says princess.
That's what mine says. There were lower tier officials. These satraps were lower tier officials, is what my definition is.
So they were like lower. They were lower than. They were lower than kings, but they were still kind of upper echelon management, but they weren't. Anyway. And then this Daniel began distinguishing himself among the commissioners and satraps because he possessed an extraordinary spirit, and the king planned to appoint him over the entire kingdom. And then the commissioners and satraps began trying to find a ground of accusation against Daniel in regard to government affairs, but they could find no ground of accusation or evidence of corruption, inasmuch as he was faithful, and no negligence or corruption was to be found in him. And these men said, "We shall not find any ground of accusation against this Daniel unless we find it against him with regard to the law of his God." And they're talking about Torah right there. The first 5 books. And then these commissioners and satraps came by agreement to the king and spoke to him as follows: "King Darius, live forever. All the commissioners of the kingdom, all the prefects of the satraps, all the high officials and the governors have consulted together that the king should establish a statute and enforce an injunction that anyone who makes a petition to any god or man besides you, O king, for 30 days shall be cast into the lion's den. Now, O king, establish the injunction and sign the document so that it may be changed according to the law of Medes and Persians, which may not be revoked." So pretty much these dudes is like, "Hey man, you're going to give this guy, this Daniel guy, you're going to give him rule over everything. You're going to leave all us out of it." So they all got together and they was like, "Hey, well, he's done broke his own law, and why don't we pass this new law and make it so anybody that does that gets put in the lion's den?" They get thrown to the lion, pretty much. You know what I'm saying. All right, so therefore King Darius signed the document, that is, the injunction. Now when Daniel knew that the document was signed, he entered his house. Now in his roof chamber had windows open toward Jerusalem, and he continued kneeling on his knees 3 times a day, praying and giving thanks before his God, as he had been doing previously. And these men came by agreement and found Daniel, making petition and supplication before his God. And then they approached and spoke before the king about the king's injunction. Did you not sign an injunction that any man who makes a petition to any god or any man besides you, O king, for 30 days is to be cast into the lion's den? The king answered and said, the statement is true according to the law of Medes and Persians, which may not be revoked. Something to think about whenever he's kneeling on and praying 3 times a day. That's actually something that we're all supposed to do, is kneel and pray 3 times a day. It's in the Old Testament. They answered and spoke before the king. Daniel, who is one of the exiles from Judah, pays no attention to you, O king, or the injunction that you signed, but keeps making his petition 3 times a day. And then as soon as the king heard his statement, he was deeply distressed and set his mind on delivering Daniel. And even until sunset, he kept exerting himself to rescue him. And these men came by agreement to the king and said to the king, recognize, O king, that it is the law of Medes and Persians that no injunction or statute which the king establishes may be changed. And this is where it starts to get weird. And the king gave orders, and Daniel was brought in and cast into the lion's den. And the king spoke and said to Daniel, your God, whom you constantly serve, will himself deliver you. And a stone was brought and laid over the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet ring and with the signet rings of his nobles, so that nothing might be changed in regard to Daniel. And what he's saying is they had, back in them days, they had these rings that they used to, they would seal scrolls and stuff like that with wax, and they had rings that had their own symbols and stuff like that on them, and they sealed the door with it like that, so that if they would know that if somebody broke the door, that kind of thing. And then the king went off to his palace and spent the night fasting, and no entertainment was brought before him, and his sleep fled from him. And the king rose and went to dawn to break of day, and went in haste to the lion's den. And when he come near the den to Daniel, he cried out with a troubled voice. The king spoke and said to Daniel, Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you constantly serve, been able to deliver you from the lions? And Daniel spoke to the king, O king, live forever. My God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths, and they have not harmed me, inasmuch as I was found innocent before him. And also toward you, O king, I have committed no crime. And the king was very pleased and gave orders for Daniel to be taken up out of his den. So Daniel was taken up out of his den, and no injury whatever was found on him, because he had trusted in his God. The king then gave orders, and they brought those men who had maliciously accused Daniel, and they cast them, their children, and their wives into the lion's den. And they had not reached the bottom of the den before the lions overpowered them and crushed all their bones. You ain't got no questions about that? So they throw Daniel in there, and then Daniel come on up out of it, and then they throw the dudes that was accusing them down in there, and before they even got to the bottom of it, lions done been eating them. Then Darius the king wrote to all the peoples, nations, and men of every language who were living in the land, may your peace abound. I make a decree that in all the dominion of my kingdom, men are to fear and tremble before the God of Daniel. So, I mean, these dudes that was they were trying to idolize Darius, and they convinced him that he was more important than the God that Daniel was praying to. And then Daniel's faith was strong enough that whenever he got thrown into the den of lions, that convinced Darius that we need to start praying to the God of Daniel, which is our God, right? So, so may your peace abound. I make a decree that in all the dominion of my kingdom and all the fear and all the tremble before the God of Daniel. And this is kind of a, for he is the living God and enduring forever, and his kingdom is one which will not be destroyed, and his dominion will be forever. He delivers and rescues and performs signs and wonders in heaven and on earth, who has also delivered Daniel from the power of the lions. So this, Daniel enjoyed success in the reign of Darius and in the reign of Cyrus the Persian. So that's pretty much the whole deal. And I don't know if you want to talk to people off up in here. You don't want to. You want to talk to people. That's pretty much the story. I mean, he God delivered him because he was faithful. It was righteous, the way that Daniel handled everything. You know what I'm saying? You feel me, bro?
It's a lot of faith to have.
That's a lot of faith to have. It's a pile of faith. Big old pile of faith. Big old pile of lion faith. You just got smacked by a Bible on the internet. Let's talk to folks for a minute. See if we can make this weird. Because we got to make it weird. Because there's probably going to be somebody that wants to come up in here and say some stuff. It don't necessarily have to be weird. I mean, I prefer that it wasn't weird. You're weird. You're weird. You're drinking soda weird on the internet.
Soda.
Whatever that is. What you got in there? Sprite?
Water.
Oh, well, you drink water weird on the internet. Everybody else want to be on phone here? What? They might want to. I want to see. Well, no, I guess I better not do it. I don't guess anybody else wants me to come up there. A1P said, let me fix my hair right quick. Yeah. I didn't even take any notes. What else y'all want to talk about? Let's break the internet. What you want to talk about? Just gonna open it up and see what you come up with. There. Huh? What? That's a compass. Yeah. North over yonder. Mini tickle? Yeah, we could talk about this.
Oh, yeah, that is.
Yeah, that'd be a good one if you want to.
It's all me.
Well, no, it's before what we were just talking about. A lot of people don't.
It's a little weird.
Yeah, it's gonna get a little weird.
That's a good story, though.
Where was that? Right there. Um, 5:13.
Where? Number?
Daniel 5:13. It's right before we was a little while ago. Amendment 1, you're always lagging, son. I don't know what y'all, I don't even know why I turned the chat on. What's up? 5:13. Now, why don't you, I got to do something right quick. Why don't you keep looking just like you are, real pretty, and talk loud enough for everybody to hear you and start reading it? You're going to be an internet superstar. Well, I'll do it. Daniel was brought in before the king, and the king spoke and said to Daniel, "Are you that Daniel who is one of the exiles from Judah, whom my father the king brought from Judah? Now I've heard about you, and that the spirit of the gods is in you, and that illumination, insight, and extraordinary wisdom have been found in you. Just now the wise men and the conjurers were brought in before me that they might read this inscription and make its interpretation known to me, but they could not declare the interpretation of the message." So pretty much this dude's he done had a dream, can't nobody figure it out, and then somebody else that was down there with Daniel said, "Hey, I know this guy,
He talks to God.
and he can interpret messages."
I think I've heard this story.
Yeah, we've all heard this story. And so he brings dude up there. He brings Daniel up there and says, "Just now the wise men and the conjurers are brought in for me. They might read this inscription and make its interpretation known to me. But they could not declare its interpretation of the message. But I personally have heard about you, that you are able to give interpretations and solve difficult problems. Now, if you are able to read the inscription and make its interpretation known to me, you will be clothed with the purple and wear a necklace of gold around your neck, and you will have authority as the third ruler in the kingdom." Which is like, king, and then, he'd be way on up there. And then Daniel answered and said before the king, "Keep your gifts for yourself or give your rewards to someone else. However, I will read the inscription to the king and make the interpretation known to him. O king, the Most High God granted sovereignty, grandeur, glory, and majesty to Nebuchadnezzar your father. And because of the grandeur which he bestowed on him, all the peoples, nations, and many of every language feared and trembled before him. Whomever he wished, he killed, and whomever he spared alive, whomever he wished elevated, and whomever he wished he humbled. But when his heart was lifted up and his spirit became so proud that he behaved arrogantly, he was disposed from his royalty throne, and his glory was taken away from him. He was also driven away from mankind, and his heart was made like that of beasts, and his dwelling place was with the wild donkeys." And they actually had donkeys that lived wild in the desert. "And he was given grass to eat like cattle, and his body was drenched with the dew of heaven, and until he recognized that the Most High God is ruler over the realm of mankind, and that he sets over it whom he wishes. Yet you, his son, Belshazzar, have not humbled your heart, even though you knew all this. But you have exalted yourself against the Lord of heaven, and they have brought you vessels of the house before you. You and your nobles, your wives, and your concubines have been drinking wine from them. And you have praised the gods of silver and gold, of bronze, iron, wood, and stone. Their idolatry. They're praising stuff that isn't God. That's what that means.
Do you understand that? What that is? It's important.
But the God in whose hand are your life breath and your ways you have not glorified. And then his hand was sent from him, and his inscription was written out. And this is where it gets really weird. Then the hand was sent from him, capital him, God. And this inscription was written out. Now this is the inscription that was written out. Mene, mene, tekel, upharsin. And this is the interpretation of the message. Mene, God has numbered your kingdom and put an end to it. Tekel, you have been weighed on the scales and been found deficient. Peres, your kingdom has been divided and given over to the Medes and the Persians. And then Belshazzar gave orders, and they clothed Daniel with purple and put a necklace of gold around his neck, and issued a proclamation concerning him that he now had authority as the third ruler in the kingdom. That same night, Belshazzar, the Chaldean king, was slain. So Darius the Mede received the kingdom at about the age of 62. And that's where we just talked about Darius. But yeah, your days are numbered. You've been weighed and found wanting. That's where that whole saying comes from. Y'all want to say goodnight to the internet? That's it. That's all the good night. That's all the good night y'all get. Y'all don't deserve anything else. Anybody else want to say good night? No, you don't want nothing. Mom?
Night.
Night. Love, homies. Ah. We need to do this like every night.
Yeah, not at midnight, but not at midnight, but this would be good.
Be good.
That was one of my favorite stories.
Why don't y'all pick another one so we can do another one tomorrow, or maybe two tomorrow. Pick
Pick
two.
a time to do it at the same time every single night.
No, we're not live anymore. It's still just the camera. It's okay. Dad don't know stuff. No. We can go back up through here and look at the 50 jillion comments that we got going on right here. And see all these people saying hi to us.
You're live.
What? I'm not live anymore. The broadcast has ended. Oh, no, I am still live.
I kept saying you didn't turn it on.